There's something oddly peaceful about hearing pine needles crunch under your tires when you've left everything else behind. No emails, no courtrooms, no apartment noise, just the kind of silence that lets you believe, even for a second, that maybe this time, things will be different. My daughter, Lyra, was asleep in the passenger seat, clutching her ragged old stuffed rabbit by one ear, her head tipped sideways against the glass as our dusty old SUV climbed the winding road into Alder Glen. The wooden sign that greeted us looked like it hadn't been touched since the late '80s. Spine faded, chain rusted, hanging crooked, and I liked that. Meant less HOA micromanaging. Or so I thought. Behind us were two trucks, one full of our furniture, the other packed with the lifeblood of my career: monitors, servers, networking gear, and the security hardware I designed and sold to companies who didn't even know I was the one keeping them safe. After a brutal custody battle and a long overdue move out of the city, this was supposed to be our fresh start. Me, a single dad with too much baggage and not enough peace, trying to give Lyra a life that didn't feel like a war zone. We passed a tall metal gate, keypad on one side. That was the entrance to the gated part of Alder Glen. My land wasn't technically inside, just adjacent. A leftover parcel from a time when the mountain was ranch land and zoning laws were still figuring themselves out. It was legally independent. No HOA dues, no ridiculous bylaws about mailbox color or grass length. Just my name on a deed and the quiet stretch of forest surrounding the house at the top of the hill. We pulled in, gravel popping under the tires. The place looked like something out of a rustic magazine's late gray siding, dark cedar trim, wraparound deck, and enough tree cover to keep the nosy at bay. But the VYEW was wide open. And apparently, so was the door to chaos. I was helping the movers unload when I heard another engine's low, deliberate. I turned and saw a black luxury SUV stop just short of my drive. 3 people stepped out like they were on a mission. A man in khakis, a woman with sunglasses big enough to block out the sunund in front of them, wearing a beige vest, and a scowl so permanent you'd think she'd been born with it, came Eleanor Bradford. "You can't unload here," she snapped before even introducing herself. "Excuse me?" I asked, brushing off my hands. "You're not in our records," she said, stepping onto my gravel like she'd paved it herself. "This road is HOA maintained. You don't have clearance." "I'm Miles Rowan," I replied calmly. "Just bought this place. Not part of your HOA." I pulled the folder from my front seat: title, deed, zoning map, notarized AFIDA VYTS. I had receipts, literal ones. Eleanor barely glanced at the folder. She grabbed one paper, crumpled it, and tossed it like it offended her. "This land's been vacant for years. It's not zoned for residents. We've had issues with squatters." I let out a sharp laugh. "I paid Dulaw $420,000 at auction. You want to argue with county records?" Her friends shifted nervously, but Eleanor didn't flinch. "You can't stay without our approval," she insisted. "We have standards." Then she pulled out her phone loud enough for the mountains to echo and said, "Yes, 911? I need to report a trespasser. Possibly armed. Yes, there's a child on the property." That's when Lyra walked out holding a juice pouch, blinking sleepily at the commotion. I moved fast, shielding her with my body. The movers stopped what they were doing. Eleanor smiled satisfied. I didn't yell. I didn't panic. I called my lawyer and told him to stay on standby. Then I looked Eleanor in the eyes and said, "You're going to regret that call." A sheriff's cruiser arrived less than 10 minutes later. Lights flashing, but no siren. The officer stepped out cautiously, hand on his belt. "Sir," he said, "step away from the child." "She's my daughter," I replied calmly, slowly. Eleanor jumped in. "He broke into the Holloway property. It's been abandoned. Now he's here with trucks. Who knows what he's hiding?" The officer turned to me. "Name?" "Miles Rowan. I own this property. Purchased legally 6 weeks ago. Not within HOA jurisdiction. I've got all the paperwork." He nodded slightly. I handed him the full folder. He walked back to his cruiser, radioed something in, then flipped through the documents. That's when a second cruiser rolled up. The sergeant stepped out, older, gruff, and clearly not new to HOA drama. "You Rowan?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "You say this parcel's independent?" "Yes. The county parcel map makes that clear." He re-VYEU'd the documents and a printed email from the county assessor's office. Then he turned to Eleanor and said, "Ma'am, this man's paperwork is airtight. The land is his. You just filed a false 911 report. Her smug expression faltered. Wait, that can't be. I have a map. You called in an armed trespasser with a child on site. That's not a clerical error. That's a misuse of emergency SARE VYCS. You could be charged. Her associates were already backing toward their SUV. Eleanor turned, stiff, and left without a word. The sergeant looked at me and said, "You came prepared. Learn the hard way." I replied, watching Lyra sip her juice like none of this fazed her. I thought it was over. It wasn't. It started with silence. The kind you can feel. Neighbors who smiled when we moved in now looked away. The teenager who helped me unload mulch never came back. Then the trash bin vanished. Just gone. Sanitation said it had been flagged for contamination, which was garbage, pun intended. Movers canceled our second delivery, saying the HOA had restricted gate access and threatened fines. Then came the call from Lyra's school. A woman had stopped by and raised concerns about custody. No name, no ID, just enough suspicion to trigger a red flag. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I wired the property with cameras, sensors, plate scanners, thermal detection. If anyone so much as coughed near my fence, I'd know. Then I opened a folder with my lawyer and said, "It's war." By Thursday, I got my first hit. 2:13 a.m., motion detected behind the shed. Playback showed a man hoodie with Bradford concrete on the back lobbing a trash bag over the fence. Deliberate. Calculated. The next day, the school called again. Anonymous email claimed I was using a fake identity. CPS had been notified. That broke something in me. Not fear. Rage. Cold, methodical rage. You don't come after someone's child and expect them to stay nice. I knocked on Simon Calloway's door, a retired firefighter, 3 houses down. Always nodded. Always waved. He didn't deny anything. Invited me in, poured black coffee. "She's been telling folks you exploited a legal loophole, had shady ties, maybe PTSD," he said. "It's poison. You believe it?" He shook his head. "Son, I've walked into burning meth labs. You just want peace." He signed a witness statement. I added it to the folder. Then I called Linda Grace, real estate lawyer and former prosecutor. I sent her everything. Videos, statements, screenshots. Her response? "We're going to ruin them." Next, I hired Doug Pendergrass, a forensic HOA auditor. Guy looked like he'd file a lawsuit over Excel formatting. He found everything. Misused funds, spa receipts, HOA landscaping paid for at Eleanor's house, not public areas. A fake contractor billing due law $1,500 for easement inspection. Then the smoking gun in internal zoning diagram, altered to show my land as under HOA control. The vote to approve it? Never happened. The forger? Kendra, the HOA treasurer, confirmed Eleanor edited it herself using outdated software. On her niece's laptop. Metadata, IP addresses, it was all there. Linda submitted the AFIDA VYT. 2 days later, I got a text. One word, saw approved saw. That morning, I watched from my deck as sheriff's cruisers rolled into the HOA office. Deputies entered with a list from Doug and Kendra files, passwords, hidden drives labeled archives. The key? Taped under Eleanor's desk. You can't make this stuff up. They found everything. Misappropriated wellness funds. Grocery bills. A spreadsheet with resident names, color-coded for loyalty and pressure potential. Notes about Lyra's school. One file literally read, "Must isolate. Use school channels." By nightfall, Eleanor had vanished. An HOA-wide email confirmed she was on administrative leave pending investigation. But I knew what came next. Court. I wore a clean shirt, sat beside Linda. No theatrics, just truth. We laid it all out: the fake report, school harassment, surveillance footage, financial fraud. We played the Zoom recording Eleanor's voice. We need to move fast on Rowan. If we flip Calloway, the rest will follow. Maybe we adjust his pension. Even the judge looked disgusted. I testified last. When asked why I didn't walk away, I looked at the courtroom, at Simon, at Mara, at every neighbor who'd been afraid to speak. Because it stopped being about me, I said. It became about what we allow and what we won't. Verdict: Eleanor was removed. HOA to undergo audit. I was awarded due law $95,000 in damages and legal costs. Criminal charges followed. As deputies led her away, there were no words. No threats. Just the echo of her heels. And one soft clap from Simon. A week later, we had a barbecue. Kids ran through sprinklers. Music played. Neighbors smiled again. And Lyra? She climbed into my lap that night, looked up at the stars, and asked, "Is she gone forever?" I nodded. "She's managing court dates now." She grinned. "Good. I like it better this way." "So do I." "Now, I'll ask you, what would you have done? When the system meant to protect becomes the weapon. When control turns into corruption." Drop your thoughts below. Let's talk HOA abuse, justice, and what happens when good people finally push back.